22 years of marriage destroyed. Private investigator exposes stay-at-home wife's secret life. I'm 45 years old, and for 22 years I thought I had the perfect marriage. My wife was 43, and we had built what I believed was a solid life together. We have one daughter who's 22 now and living in Atlanta, pursuing her career in graphic design. I'm proud of her. She's independent, smart, and has her head on straight. But this story isn't about her. This is about how I discovered that the woman I trusted for nearly 2 decades was living a completely different life behind my back. Let me give you some context. I work in commercial real estate development here in Georgia. It's a demanding job, typically keeping me at the office from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. most days, but it pays well, very well. My wife was a stay-at-home wife. We made that decision together years ago when our daughter was born. She wanted to be there for our daughter, and honestly, my income was more than enough to support our lifestyle. We lived in a beautiful 4,500 square foot home on 5 acres just outside of Savannah. The property was secluded, private, with a long driveway lined with oak trees. Our nearest neighbors were about a quarter mile away on either side. It was peaceful, quiet, and as I would later discover, the perfect setup for someone living a double life. My wife and I had what I thought was a good marriage. We didn't fight much. We had date nights when our schedules allowed. We took vacations together. We had a small circle of friends, mostly other couples from my work, and a few neighbors we'd socialize with occasionally. After our daughter moved out about 4 years ago to go to art school before eventually moving to Atlanta, I thought we'd grow even closer. You know, rediscover each other without the responsibilities of raising a child. But looking back now, that's when things started to change. Subtly at first, then more noticeably over the past 2 years. It started with small things about 2 years ago. My wife began going to the gym more frequently. Now, I want to be clear. I wasn't one of those husbands who got suspicious just because his wife wanted to get in shape. I actually encouraged it. I thought it was great that she was taking care of herself. She joined this boutique fitness studio about 20 minutes from our house, and she'd go 3, sometimes 4 times a week. She looked great, felt more confident, and I was happy for her. Then came the phone changes around the same time. My wife had always been casual about her phone, leaving it on the counter, not caring if I picked it up to check the time or whatever. But when she started getting serious about the gym, her phone became glued to her hand. She'd take it everywhere, to the bathroom, to the kitchen when she was cooking, even to the backyard when she was just sitting on the patio. If it buzzed, she'd check it immediately. If I walked into a room while she was on it, she'd quickly switch apps or turn the screen away. I'm not an idiot. I noticed, but I also didn't want to be that husband, the paranoid, controlling type who accuses his wife of something without proof. So I watched, I observed, and I started to see more red flags. Our sex life changed dramatically. We went from being intimate maybe twice a week to once every 2 weeks, then once a month. When we did have sex, she seemed distracted, like she was going through the motions. There was no passion, no connection. I tried talking to her about it, asking if something was wrong, if there was something I could do differently. She'd always brush it off, saying she was tired or stressed or just not in the mood. She even suggested I might be pressuring her too much, which made me back off completely. I didn't want to be that guy either. Then there were the errands. She started running a lot of errands. She'd leave the house for hours, saying she was going to the grocery store, Target, the mall, meeting a friend for lunch. But here's the thing. When she came back from these supposed shopping trips, she rarely had much to show for it. Maybe 1 or 2 bags, sometimes nothing at all. When I'd ask what took so long, she'd say she was just browsing, or traffic was bad, or she stopped by for coffee and lost track of time. The final straw, the thing that made me decide to take action, happened one afternoon about 8 months ago in early February. I had a meeting cancel unexpectedly, so I decided to head home early. It was around 3 in the afternoon, and I figured I'd surprise her. Maybe we could have lunch together or just spend some time talking. We hadn't really connected in weeks. As I pulled up our long driveway, I noticed a strange car parked near the side of our house, partially hidden by the trees. It was a black Mercedes sedan, newer model. My first thought was maybe my wife had a friend over, but it didn't feel like it was just friends visiting because she would have told me. We lived in such a secluded area that people didn't just drop by unannounced, and we certainly hadn't scheduled any service appointments. I parked my car and walked toward the front door. As I got closer, I could hear music playing inside, definitely not her usual taste. I opened the door as quietly as I could, and that's when I heard it. Laughter. Her laugh, but different. Lighter, more carefree, almost girlish. And then a man's voice, low and intimate, saying something I couldn't quite make out. My heart started pounding. I stood in the foyer, frozen, trying to decide what to do. Part of me wanted to storm into whatever room they were in and confront them right there. But another part of me, the logical, calculating part that had served me well in business, told me to be smart about this. I needed proof. I needed to know exactly what was going on before I made any moves. After all, me resorting to any kind of violence would certainly change my life. So I quietly backed out of the house, got in my car, and drove back down the driveway. I parked on the main road, just out of sight, and waited. About 45 minutes later, the black Mercedes came down the driveway and turned onto the road. I couldn't see the driver clearly, but it was definitely a man. Looked to be in his 40s, maybe early 50s, athletic build, dark hair, wearing a polo shirt. I sat there for another 20 minutes, trying to process what I'd just experienced. Then I drove back to the house. My wife was in the kitchen, looking completely normal, making what appeared to be preparations for dinner. She seemed surprised to see me home early, but not panicked, not guilty. She smiled, kissed me on the cheek, and asked how my day was. I told her the meeting ended early and I decided to come home. She didn't mention having anyone over, didn't say a word about it. I asked casually if anyone had stopped by today. She looked me right in the eyes and said no. She'd been home alone all day doing laundry and some light cleaning. The lie came so easily to her that it actually scared me more than anything else. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying everything in my head: the car, the laughter, the man's voice, her complete composure and blatant lie when I got home. By morning, I'd made my decision. I was going to hire a private investigator. I did my research carefully. I found a firm in Savannah that specialized in infidelity investigations. The owner was a former police detective, and he had excellent reviews from attorneys I'd worked with in real estate deals. I called him from my office, explained the situation, and we set up a meeting for the next day. He told me that in his experience, when someone has this many red flags, there's usually something going on. He explained his process: surveillance, documentation, photographic and video evidence if possible. He also told me about Georgia's laws regarding infidelity and divorce. This was important. Georgia is one of the states where you can file for divorce based on adultery, and if you prove it, the cheating spouse can't get alimony. Since my wife had been a stay-at-home wife for 22 years and had no income of her own, this was huge. If she was cheating, she wouldn't be entitled to a dime in alimony, though she'd still get her share of marital property. The PI quoted me $5,500 for a week of comprehensive surveillance. It wasn't cheap, but compared to what I could potentially lose in alimony over the years, it was nothing. I hired him on the spot. The PI started surveillance the following Monday. He told me not to change anything about my routine, to act normal so my wife wouldn't suspect anything. It was one of the hardest weeks of my life, going through the motions, acting like everything was fine, all while knowing that someone was following my wife and documenting whatever she was doing. The PI called me on Friday afternoon and asked me to come to his office. He said he had everything I needed. I left work early, telling my assistant I had an appointment, and drove to his office with my stomach in knots. When I walked in, he had a folder on his desk, thick with papers, photos, and a thumb drive. He didn't sugarcoat anything. He looked at me and said my wife was having an affair, and he had irrefutable proof. He walked me through the surveillance day by day. On Monday, my wife left the house at 10:30 a.m. and drove to her gym. She went inside for her workout class, which ended at 11:30 a.m. But instead of leaving, she stayed in the lobby area, talking to a guy the PI identified as a personal trainer who worked there. The guy looked to be in his mid to late 40s and in really good shape. They talked for about 20 minutes, very friendly, lots of touching and laughing. Then they both left the gym at 11:50 a.m. in separate cars. The PI followed my wife to a shopping center where she went into a Panera Bread. The guy arrived 5 minutes later. They had lunch together for an hour and a half, sitting close, holding hands. The PI had photos of all of this. On Tuesday, my wife left the house at 1 p.m. and drove to a hotel. She parked and went inside. The PI waited in the parking lot. 10 minutes later, the guy pulled up in that same black Mercedes I'd seen at my house. He went inside. The PI waited for 3 hours. They came out separately. My wife first, looking around before heading to her car, then him 15 minutes later. The PI had photos of both of them entering, their cars in the parking lot, and them leaving. Wednesday was similar to Tuesday. Different hotel, same pattern. This time, it was a Fairfield Inn. My wife arrived at 1:15 p.m. He showed up 10 minutes later in his Mercedes. They were inside for 2.5 hours. Thursday, my wife went to the gym again at 10:30 a.m. She and the guy met in the lobby after her class, talked for a while, and then she left. No hotel that day, but the PI said their body language and interaction made it crystal clear they were intimate. The way they touched each other, stood close, the looks they gave each other. Friday was the most damning. My wife left the house at 9 a.m. and drove to this guy's apartment complex just outside Savannah. She went inside and didn't come out until 2:30, over 5 hours at his place. The PI had photos of her entering the building, the guy's Mercedes in the parking lot, and her leaving hours later. I sat there looking at all these photos, and I felt like I was going to be sick. There was my wife of 22 years, the mother of my daughter, sneaking around with some gym trainer, meeting him at hotels, going to his apartment, lying to my face about where she was and what she was doing. The private investigator also showed me time-stamped video footage of some of these encounters. He had video of them at Panera, clearly acting like a couple. It was irrefutable. I asked the PI how long he thought this had been going on. He said, based on how comfortable they were with each other, their routines, and the fact that they had specific hotel preferences, he estimated at least 6 months, probably longer, maybe even a year or more. I thanked the PI, paid him the balance of what I owed, and took the folder and thumb drive. I sat in my car in the parking lot for 20 minutes, trying to figure out my next move. I called my attorney, a guy I'd worked with on several real estate deals over the years. I told him I needed to see him urgently about a divorce. He fit me in that same afternoon. I showed my attorney everything, all the photos, all the video, all the documentation from the PI. He looked through it carefully and then looked at me and said, "This is a mess, not in a bad way, but the infidelity itself." He explained the process, the timeline, what to expect. In Georgia, I could file for divorce immediately based on adultery. The proof was rock solid, which meant my wife would be barred from receiving alimony. However, she'd still be entitled to a fair share of marital property. The house, savings, investments, retirement accounts would all be on the table. My attorney said the best strategy was to move quickly and decisively, get the divorce petition filed, serve her with papers, and don't give her time to drain bank accounts or do anything shady with assets. I went home that night and my wife was there, cheerful as could be, asking about my day. I told her it was fine, just a normal day. She had no idea what was coming. That weekend was surreal. We did normal things, went to dinner Saturday night, did some yard work on Sunday. The whole time I was looking at her and thinking about those photos, those videos, her with him. Monday morning, I told my wife I had to go to the office early for a meeting. Instead, I went to my attorney's office and signed the divorce petition. By noon, a process server showed up at our house and served my wife with the papers. I wasn't there. My attorney had advised me to stay away, to be at work or somewhere public in case she reacted badly. My wife called me at 12:30 p.m., hysterical. She was crying, screaming, asking what I was doing, saying this was crazy. I told her to read the petition, specifically the grounds for divorce. I told her I knew everything about her personal trainer. The phone went silent. Then she started with the excuses, the begging, the promises. She said it wasn't what I thought, that she could explain, that it was a mistake. I told her I had photos, videos, a full week of surveillance showing her meeting him at hotels and his apartment. She said we could work through this, that she'd end it, that she loved me. I asked her how long it had been going on. She didn't answer at first. Then she admitted it had been about a year, a full year of lying to my face, a full year of sneaking around with her personal trainer while I was at work supporting her. I told her I wanted her out of the house. She said she had nowhere to go. I told her that wasn't my problem anymore. I told her to figure it out, stay with a friend, get a hotel. I really didn't give a damn, but I wanted her out by the time I got home. She started crying again, pleading with me. I hung up. I called my attorney and told him about the conversation. He said I couldn't legally force her out of the house since it was marital property, but I could move out myself if I wanted. I decided to stay. I'd worked for this house, paid for this house. I wasn't giving it up. When I got home that evening, my wife was still there. She tried to talk to me, to explain, to apologize. I wouldn't engage. I told her to sleep in the guest room and we would communicate through our attorneys from now on. She tried several more times that week to talk to me, to fix things. I shut it down every time. The next few weeks were hell. My wife hired an attorney who initially tried to argue that the evidence was obtained illegally, that the private investigator had violated her privacy, but my attorney shut that down. Everything the PI had done was completely legal. The surveillance was conducted in public places, restaurants, hotel parking lots, an apartment complex, and outside our home where my wife had no expectation of privacy. The photos and videos were all taken in places where anyone could have seen her. When her attorney realized they couldn't fight the adultery claim, she tried to negotiate. She wanted a larger share of the marital assets in exchange for my wife not contesting the divorce. My attorney and I discussed it. We agreed to give my wife 40% of our liquid assets, savings, and investments in exchange for me keeping the house and my retirement accounts intact. The liquid assets totaled about $950,000, so my wife would get $380,000. It was worth it to me to just be done with it and avoid a prolonged court battle. During this time, my wife also tried to get our daughter involved. Our daughter was living in Atlanta, and my wife called her crying, telling her that I was divorcing her over a misunderstanding and that I was being cruel and unreasonable. I had to call our daughter and explain the real situation. I didn't want to because she's her mother, but I also wasn't going to let my wife manipulate our daughter with lies. I told our daughter the truth, that her mother had been having an affair for over a year, that I had proof, and that this wasn't about me being vindictive, but about her mother making choices that destroyed our marriage. Our daughter was devastated. She couldn't believe her mother would do something like this. We talked for over an hour. She cried, asked questions, tried to understand how this could have happened. In the end, she told me she supported me and that she was disappointed in her mother's choices. She said she'd still have a relationship with her mother because that's her mom, but she understood why I couldn't stay married to her. That conversation broke my heart, but I'm grateful our daughter is mature enough to understand the situation. The divorce process took about 4 months total. There was the mandatory waiting period in Georgia, plus negotiations over property division, plus court dates. My wife tried a few more times to drag it out or negotiate for more, but eventually she realized she wasn't going to get a better deal than what was being offered. The divorce was finalized 3 months ago. My wife got her 40% of liquid assets, the $380,000, plus her car and personal property. I kept the house, which we'd bought 22 years ago and is now worth about $1.1 million, my retirement accounts, and my business assets. Most importantly, she got zero alimony. In Georgia, when you prove adultery, the cheating spouse usually won't get any alimony. That saved me potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years. My wife moved into an apartment in Savannah, took the settlement money, and started trying to rebuild her life. She had no work history for 22 years, so finding a job was tough. Eventually, she found work as a receptionist at a dental office, making probably $35,000 a year, a far cry from the lifestyle she was used to. I heard from one of our couple friends that my wife and her personal trainer tried to make a go of it after everything came out, but apparently it fell apart within 90 days. The guy ended up moving to Florida for some job opportunity, and my wife was left alone in her apartment trying to figure out her life. Last I heard, she was struggling financially, working her receptionist job, and dealing with the reality that her affair cost her everything. As for me, I'm doing okay. Some days are harder than others. I'm still in the house. I thought about selling it, but our daughter convinced me not to. She said it's been our family home for so long, and she didn't want me to give that up because of what her mother did. So I stayed. I've redecorated, changed some things, made it feel more like mine and less like ours. I replaced furniture in the master bedroom, repainted several rooms, and even renovated the kitchen, something my wife had wanted to do for years, but we never got around to. Now it's done the way I want it. I've closed several major deals over the past few months, and my career is doing great. I've also been going to therapy since shortly after I filed for divorce, which I probably should have done years ago. My therapist has helped me process the betrayal, the anger, the sense of loss, because even though my wife betrayed me, I still lost 22 years of my life with someone I thought I knew. I lost the future I thought we were going to have together. That's not easy to get over. My daughter and I are closer than ever. She comes to visit regularly, usually every few weeks, and we talk on the phone several times a week. She's still in contact with her mother. She's her mom after all, but their relationship is strained. She told me she's having a hard time forgiving her mother for what she did to our family, and they mostly just text now rather than having real conversations. I've started dating a little bit, nothing serious yet. It's hard to trust again after something like this, but I'm trying. I'm 45 years old, and I have a lot of life left to live. I'm not going to let my wife's betrayal define the rest of my life. Looking back, I can see the signs I missed or chose to ignore, But I also know that I can't blame myself for trusting my wife. That's what you're supposed to do in a marriage. Trust your partner. My wife is the one who broke that trust. She's the one who made the choice to cheat, to lie, to destroy our marriage. If there's one piece of advice I can give to anyone who suspects their partner is cheating, it's this: trust your gut, but get proof. Don't confront without evidence. Don't make accusations you can't back up. Hire a professional if you need to. It might seem expensive or crazy, but it's worth it. The money I spent on the private investigator saved me potentially hundreds of thousands in alimony. More than that, it gave me the truth. And the truth, as painful as it was, set me free. I'm not going to lie and say I'm completely over it. I'm not. There are still days when I feel angry, betrayed, and hurt. There are still nights when I lie in bed and wonder what I could have done differently, though my therapist reminds me that my wife's choices were her own. But I'm healing. Day by day, I'm moving forward. I'm rebuilding my life, and I'm doing it on my own terms. My wife made her choice. She chose to throw away 22 years of marriage for an affair with her personal trainer. She chose to lie to me, to deceive me, to disrespect our vows, and now she's living with the consequences of those choices. She lost her comfortable life, her financial security, and the respect of her daughter. She has to live with the fact that she destroyed our family for a relationship that didn't even last 6 months after everything came out. As for me, I'm choosing to move forward. To anyone out there going through something similar, I want you to know that you're not alone. Infidelity is devastating, but it's not the end of your story. You can survive this. It takes time, it takes work, and it takes support from the people who love you, but it's possible. And to anyone out there who's thinking about cheating on their partner, I want you to understand the real cost. It's not just about the affair. It's about the destruction you leave in your wake. It's about the person who trusted you, who built a life with you, who believed in you. Is it really worth it? Is a few hours of excitement worth destroying everything you've built? In my wife's case, the answer is pretty clear. She traded 22 years of marriage, financial security, and her daughter's respect for an affair that lasted about a year and a relationship that fell apart almost immediately after it became public. She's now 43 years old, working an entry-level job after having no work experience for over 2 decades, living in a small apartment and trying to rebuild a life she destroyed with her own choices. I don't take pleasure in her struggles. Despite everything, I don't wish her harm, but I also don't feel sorry for her. Thanks for listening to my story. If you're going through something similar, stay strong. Trust your instincts, get the proof you need, and remember, you deserve better than someone who would betray your trust. You deserve honesty, loyalty, and respect. Don't settle for anything less.